I always thought the worst betrayal would come from someone who hated me. I was wrong. It came from the one person who swore she'd protect me, my own sister. 2 weeks ago, I was at the top of the world. After years of freelance gigs and overlooked job applications, I finally landed the position I'd worked my whole 20s for, a branding strategist at Vale & Wolf Media, one of the most respected PR firms in New York. The offices were sleek, the clients were elite, and the CEO, Julian. Vale actually knew my name. My ideas were being heard. I was finally out of my sister's shadow. Sabrina Hart influencer, socialite, manipulator in heels. Everyone adored her online. 4.2 million followers, brand deals, charity appearances. But I knew the truth. Sabrina was a storm in designer clothing. Growing up, she controlled every room she entered, every relationship I had, even every mistake I tried to fix. She broke people with a smile. And for years, I lived under the weight of her spotlight, invisible but bruised. So when I got that job, on my own merit, it felt like escape. Freedom. But freedom lasted exactly 13 days. On the 14th, morning, I walked into the office like I always did, iced coffee in one hand, laptop bag over my shoulder, earbuds in. The receptionist gave me a strange look. I brushed it off. At 9:03 a.m., I got the message. HR meeting, 9:10, 16th floor. No subject, no explanation. When I walked in, 2 people were seated across the table, one from HR, the other an executive, assistant. No Julian, no warning. And then I heard it. We appreciate your time with us, Alyssa, but your position is being dissolved effective immediately. That was it. No feedback, no discussion, no incident. Just over. I asked why. They told me it was a team realignment. I asked who made the decision. They said it came from above. I asked for 1 minute with Julian. They said he was unavailable. They let me walk out without saying goodbye. My keycard was deactivated before I hit the elevator. My email account? Already scrubbed. I was a ghost before I even reached the lobby. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat in the marble foyer, numb, trying to understand how something so perfect had unraveled so fast. And then I heard her voice. Faint, but unmistakable. Sabrina, she, was upstairs. Laughing, talking to someone, Julian maybe. How could that even be possible? She didn't work there. She had no reason to be in that building. Unless she was the reason I'd just been fired. My stomach turned to ice, because deep down, I knew. My sister didn't show up anywhere by accident. And if she was here, it meant one thing. She'd come to bury me. The second I heard Sabrina's voice in that building, I knew nothing about my firing was random. I didn't go home. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I stayed in that lobby, frozen in disbelief, until I saw her descend from the private elevator. She looked as radiant as ever, sunglasses indoors, wrapped in an expensive trench coat, talking into her phone with that same syrupy, PR-perfect tone she used to talk her way out of everything. She didn't see me. I didn't want her to, yet. She got into a black town car waiting at the curb. I didn't follow physically. I followed digitally. Years of managing crisis campaigns for brands had taught me tricks, and one of them was using public registry tools to track licensed rideshare vehicles. I traced the car to a boutique hotel in Soho. Of course she'd hide there, glamorous, low-key, shielded by elite clientele. I didn't confront her right away. I went home first. I needed proof. I still had partial access to my Vale & Wolf credentials, just enough to pull up my last few email threads. And that's when it hit me. The timeline. 48 hours before my firing, I had flagged a charity audit file. It seemed routine, except the nonprofit listed didn't have a federal ID match. The donation numbers were padded. I'd sent a note about it to my supervisor. Nothing dramatic, just, looks like something's missing in the back end, Will, clean up after lunch. That email was CC'd to Julian Vale. The next morning, Sabrina visited the office. That same night, the file I flagged was quietly deleted. And the following morning, I was fired. The file? It was tied to a women's wellness campaign Sabrina launched 6 months ago with glowing coverage and staged videos of her hugging refugees in Greece. But the donations were being routed through a holding company, one owned by Julian's brother. I wasn't just fired, I was eliminated. I sat at my kitchen table, every nerve buzzing, staring at a folder of old Sabrina photos. That was always her power, disarming the world with beauty and charm, then ripping the truth out from under people when they least expected it. So I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Wow. Didn't expect to hear from you so soon. You okay? Can we meet? There was a long pause. You're not going to yell at me in public, are you? Let's meet at the rooftop cafe on 11th. Noon. The same one we always went. To growing up. Where she used to take pictures of me for Instagram and crop me out. She agreed. The next day, she was already there, sipping something iced in green, flawless as ever. She wore gold hoops and a smirk. You look tired, she said, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. I just lost my job. Oh, honey. She didn't even pretend to be sympathetic. Corporate life isn't for everyone. I kept my tone flat. You were in Julian's office the day I got fired. She didn't blink. We were catching up. You threatened him. She smirked. I reminded him of his obligations. And the file? Her lips curled, just slightly. Some things are above your pay grade, sweetie. My stomach churned. You used me. She leaned closer. You weren't fired because of me, Alyssa. You were fired because you forgot what lane you're in. I stood up. Then I guess it's time to change lanes. As I turned, she called after me softly. Careful, baby sister. You've always been a little slow. Don't trip over something sharp. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened every folder, every backup I had. Anything that might still contain traces of the charity audit. Luckily, I'd saved one version offline for reference. It showed suspicious payments linked to a shell company in Delaware. I cross-referenced the EIN. The company was tied to Julian's personal lawyer. Suddenly, things clicked. Sabrina wasn't the only one hiding something. She was just the flame. But Julian was the fuel. They were both in on it. She was running fake charities for brand polish, and he was laundering funds behind the scenes. The worst part? I almost helped cover it. The phone buzzed at 3:47 a.m. Blocked number. Stop digging or watch your name burn. I stared at the message. They were scared, and that meant I was close. But I wasn't going to stop, not this time. I stared at the threat message for a long time. Not out of fear, but strategy. Whoever sent it thought I'd back down, that I'd shrink, that I'd play the role they wrote for me, disposable, naive, easily erased. But they forgot the one thing about people like me. We don't break. We calculate. And we wait. By sunrise, I had already mapped my next move. I contacted Logan, a tech analyst I used to intern with. Brilliant, loyal, and eternally underpaid. We hadn't spoken in months, but when I asked him if he could help me recover deleted files from Vale and Wolf's backend, he didn't hesitate. What are we looking for? He asked. Buried landmines, I said, and names that shouldn't be together. While he worked, I dove into the digital trail I'd left behind. My limited access had been revoked, but my auto-sync folder, my personal hard drive, still had copies. Not much, but enough to start pulling threads. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Sabrina's Wellness for Her initiative wasn't just a PR stunt gone wrong. It was a pipeline. Donations were being funneled through shell companies, all tied to her inner circle. Her hairstylist, her nutritionist, even her so-called spiritual healer. But when I ran the EIN numbers, they all linked back to one man, Julian Vale's brother, a private wealth consultant who'd been investigated twice for corporate laundering. This wasn't just a dirty partnership. It was deliberate, structured theft. They used the face of women's empowerment to mask white-collar crime, and I'd almost been part of the rollout. 3 nights later, Logan delivered. He dropped a USB drive at my apartment door, hidden inside a coffee sleeve. We'd done this in college to pass code back and forth during hacks we weren't supposed to be doing. This was bigger, way bigger. Inside were drafts of internal emails, payment orders, and one calendar note that made my breath catch. Meeting with Sabrina. Finalize erasure protocol. Alyssa. They didn't just fire me. They planned my deletion, and I wasn't the first. I emailed Julian. No threats. No hysteria. Just 3 files and a subject line that read, "Are you sure I was the problem?" He didn't reply, but Sabrina called that night. "You're spiraling," she said calmly. "This isn't good for your mental health." I smiled into the silence. "Neither is laundering charity funds." She sighed like she pitied me. "You don't know what you're doing." "No," I said. "You don't know who you fired." Then I hung up. I started the fake leaks next. Dummy PDFs. Partially redacted screenshots. I accidentally sent them to one of Sabrina's brand managers, who was known for being a gossip magnet. I planted a voice recording that was actually spliced audio from an old planning session. Nothing. Concrete, but enough to make them paranoid. And it worked. Sabrina started deleting posts. Julian canceled 3 meetings. Their PR firm issued a vague statement about internal reviews. Then came the cherry on top, an invitation to a gala. A high-profile rooftop event celebrating Sabrina's Women of Vision initiative. Julian would be there. Donors, clients, everyone they'd ever fooled. Perfect. I contacted an independent journalist named Mia Reeds. Quiet, sharp, and tenacious. I'd followed her reporting on tech fraud for years. I offered her exclusive access to every document I had, plus one condition. Live stream it, all of it. No edits, no delay. She agreed. Then I started prepping the drop. I burned the data onto mirrored USB drives, created disguised download links, scheduled encrypted cloud. Drops timed for the gala. I sent anonymized copies to press contacts, bloggers, even a few ex-employees who'd been tossed out like me. And finally, I chose a dress. Black. Sleek. Simple. The kind of thing that didn't scream revenge but whispered confidence. I walked into that gala like I belonged. Because for once, I did. The elevator ride to the rooftop felt like the longest 30 seconds of my life. My heart wasn't just pounding, it was screaming. But not from fear, from purpose. Everything I had planned, everything they had done, it all came down to this night. The rooftop was a cathedral of artificial charm. Strings of golden fairy lights, a champagne wall, guests in curated designer outfits smiling like they'd never heard the word ethics. At the center, Sabrina stood on a raised platform beside Julian, her white silk gown practically glowing under the soft lighting. She looked like a goddess, and Julian, polished, controlled, wearing that same smug mask he'd used when he fired me. They didn't see me at first. Good. I blended into the crowd, keeping my phone hidden in a velvet clutch. The live stream was already running. Mia was monitoring it off-site. My earpiece buzzed once. "We're live. Your mic's hot. Go when ready." I drifted closer to the AV booth. The screen behind Julian's podium was set to run a presentation on empowerment through giving. Cute. I plugged in a disguised USB to the backup port. The tech assistant didn't even look up. The files began syncing silently. 5 more minutes. I turned toward the bar to steady myself, and that's when I saw her, Sabrina. Her eyes locked on mine. At first, there was confusion, then suspicion, then panic. She moved fast, whispering something to Julian. He stiffened, scanned the crowd, and started toward me. But I stepped onto the stage first. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, mic in hand, voice steady. "Thank you for being here tonight. We're so glad you came to support women in leadership. But there's something you deserve to know." The screen behind me flickered, then changed. Gone were the stock photos and donation slogans. In their place, bank statements, routing numbers, internal memos, my termination form. And finally, a payment trail from Sabrina's charity account to Julian's media company, labeled "Consulting, No Deliverables." The crowd gasped. I didn't stop. For months, my sister has used your generosity to fund personal branding, shopping sprees, and hush money. I continued. Julian Vale helped structure it. I was fired when I found the file that proved it. Julian lunged toward me, but security held him back. Too many cameras were up now. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here because I refuse to be silent." The last image displayed was my employee record, my real title, my credentials, my final login, and a quote. She was never supposed to see that file. Internal Memo Mia's stream was surging past 70,000 live viewers. Screenshots flooded. Social media. Donors began leaving in droves. Sponsors pulled logos from banners. Julian was screaming something about defamation. Sabrina tried to pretend she didn't know me. I looked her dead in the eyes. "Still think I'm in the wrong lane?" She turned white. The aftermath was chaos. Police were called, not for me, but for Julian. 2 whistleblowers had forwarded corroborating documents to law enforcement during the broadcast. Sabrina fled before they arrived, slipping out a side stairwell in heels and disgrace. But the truth was already free. By the next morning, 5 major clients had dropped Vale and Wolf. 3 board members resigned, and Julian's assets were frozen, pending investigation. Sabrina tried to post a denial statement. A hateful campaign of jealousy, she called it. But no one was buying it. Screenshots were everywhere. TikTok edits, reaction videos, news panel debates. She was the story. Now and me? I was the girl they fired, who showed up anyway and brought the empire down. But I didn't celebrate. Not yet. There was still one more thing I had to do. I didn't sleep that night. Not from fear, not even from adrenaline. It was grief. Grief for the job I'd earned and lost. For the image of my sister I used to defend. For the version of myself who stayed quiet when I should have screamed. Because exposing the truth doesn't come with instant relief. It comes with silence. And once the cameras are off and the crowd disperses, all you have left is your name, and whatever's still standing beneath it. But mine was still intact, and that meant everything. In the days that followed the gala, the world turned upside down. Julian Vale was arrested 3 days later at his apartment in Tribeca, caught trying to erase files from a laptop that had already been cloned by federal investigators. His face, the face of polished PR power, was plastered across news outlets with a headline that read, "CEO charged in 12 millimeters non-profit laundering scheme." Whistleblower was his own employee. That employee was me. Sabrina vanished from public life. No posts, no statements. Her influencer accounts were suspended for fraudulent brand activity. One company even issued a class action refund after discovering their entire partnership was built on fabricated numbers. But the worst part? No apology, no confession. She just disappeared, exactly the way she wanted me to, until she called. Blocked. Number? I didn't answer. The voicemail played while I stared out my window at a rainy skyline that suddenly felt like mine again. You always had to win, didn't you? You couldn't just stay in your corner. You had to take everything. They'll forget you, Alyssa. And when they do, you'll be exactly what you were before. Nobody. I deleted it without hesitation, because I was done listening to ghosts. Instead of chasing another job in corporate PR, I did something no one expected. I started my own Heartline Strategies, a branding firm that specializes in helping women rebuild their reputations after smear campaigns, silencing, or manipulation. I called it the anti-veil. No lies, no cover-ups, just transparency, damage control, and empowerment. The inbox overflowed, not with clients looking for glitz and glamour, but with stories. A woman whose startup was sabotaged by her mentor, a whistleblower, who lost her pension after exposing medical fraud, an intern who was blacklisted for rejecting a VP's advances. Each of them had been erased. Each of them, a version of me. I didn't give them a PR makeover. I gave them a voice. 6 months later, I sat on the edge of a panel at a small conference, not a glitzy gala or televised debate, just a room full of women trying to understand how to survive in a world that punishes them for speaking. A college student raised her hand. "What happened to your sister?" she asked. The room got quiet. I paused, then answered simply. "She taught me exactly who I never want to become. I don't hate Sabrina. Not anymore. Hate takes energy. She already took enough of that. What I feel is clarity. She was my first betrayal. Julian was my second. But I was the one who decided they wouldn't be my last chapter. They tried to erase me to protect their power. But I exposed them with nothing more than the truth. And now when someone tells me I'm too quiet, too soft, too naive for this world, I smile, because they haven't seen what I do when I'm cornered. They fired me because of my sister. But that was the moment I became something they couldn't control. Not a brand, not a problem, not a girl in the shadow of a star. Just me, standing in the light.